What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Jessica Compton. Jessica is the founder of Tree of Stars, which is an initiative that promotes mental health awareness and addiction recovery through storytelling in the form of music and art. Jessica was so fun to talk to, and I want to thank her again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Now, if you're listening, you might hate what I'm about to say, and I don't care. Tonight is Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. That's a fight that I don't think anyone expected to happen. And I think the outcome should be fairly obvious. It's an 0-1 YouTuber against the greatest boxer, arguably, of all time. That being said, I have money on Logan Paul because if he wins, I get a major payday. So fingers crossed that all of a sudden life just stops making sense. And my take of saying Floyd will definitely win might age like spoiled milk. I doubt it, but hey. Nothing in the last 2 years has made sense, so just add this to the pile. Now, before we get started here, guys, you all know what to do. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. Jessica, how's it going? Thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Thank you. It's going pretty good, and I hope you're well as well.
Yeah, honestly, we mentioned offline, but Canada getting hit with that nice weather is so needed. This will come out a little later, so I don't know if like the snow came back or whatever. I hope this ages well, but that warm weather was needed badly.
For sure. I know I got, like I said before, I got my flip-flops on.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I went outside right before this interview. I was like, oh, that's what sun feels like. Wow.
Yeah, and I think even just just feeling it on our skin and just being in that moment for a full 5 minutes and taking it in, it's definitely a medicine for sure.
Yeah, I could not agree more. So before we get too deep into anything, where does your story kind of start? Like, where does this whole journey with Trees of Stars on tour start?
Yeah, so a part of my story, and I'll get into that is so with Tree of Stars, we look at self-care or self-healing in different ways because we're all different human beings. But for me, it started 4 years ago when I realized that I didn't love myself fully. And I thought I've been through years of therapy that had, not fixed me, but gave me those tools to, practice throughout my years. But it started April 2017 that I realized, reading books like from Jay Shetty or Louise Hayes, just that, I had some exercises to do and, looking in the mirror fully and saying, do I love myself? And I think that was, the moment where I was like, okay, I need to, I think I'm waking up here. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, sometimes you don't even realize until you ask yourself that question because you just assume that you do. And then someone's like, do you really love yourself though? And you're like, actually, no, I don't at all.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like a cup of coffee when it comes to self-love or self-care. And people talk about filling that cup, but I think our cup is not always full. So I think until the day we pass is like we always need to find ways to if it's slowly emptying the cup and ways to fill it back up. So, that cup of coffee is like a Ferris wheel, but it's when it's low, what are we gonna do, right?
Yeah, you need to find the tools when it's low. Yeah, no, absolutely. So did you ever, like before the 4 years, before 2017, when you realized that you didn't love yourself, was there ever a point where you did, or did that kind of love for yourself show up at any point? I think my question made sense.
I think, and maybe, this is where I can share my story. Everything I've been through kind of starts with the letter A, abandoned, abducted, abused, addict, ADHD, and arrested 4 times. Throughout all of those layers of trauma, I don't think I really had the chance to comprehend what self-love and self-care was, being at age 7 and being kidnapped and being returned, and the behaviors that came out of those layers of trauma, all the addiction of drugs, and just wanting to numb just me as a human being, and then realizing that once I was incarcerated all 4 times of the arrests, it really gave me a chance to overlook my health and really what I wanted to do with my life. So I got my last arrest. I was in adult imprisonment, and from there, I went to college and I graduated to be a jail guard, and I ended up working with aggressive, individuals or youth at risk, I guess you could say. And for 15 years at the same agency. And now I've been at the school board for 9 years, just working with, any kind of behaviors or struggles. And just, the little guys are just looking for some TLC, so we're going that extra mile.
Yeah, we sometimes we don't give enough credit to the fact that kids do need that TLC. I think we just kind of assume that, yeah, they'll feel it no matter what, and then we kind of neglect it to a point where it kind of just registers later for them.
Yeah, with 2 of my programs, so I work in a kindergarten class, and then I also work at an after-school program with the YMCA. So I'm in this school for 12 hours, but one of the programs I developed and created 4 years ago with Tria Stars, and I brought it into the schools and into the YMCA, is it's called Checkin, and we rate ourselves between 1 and 10. How are you feeling? So, if I were to ask you, like, how are you feeling between 1 and 10, 10 being the happiest. So if you say, so let's do that right now in the moment. If I ask you, how are you feeling today, 1 out of 10?
I'm feeling like an 8 right now. That sun boosted me.
Nice. So in our check-in program, we would kind of nod our heads and be like, that's pretty good. Individuals that are feeling like a 2, sometimes people say a 0. As a group, we always say, like, well, if you want to talk to me or you want to talk to us later, even if you want to talk to us in 3 days from now, but is there anything we could do for you at this point if you're feeling like a 2 or a 3? Or even can we, sit with you at a 2 and just let you be and be compassionate for that number and respect you, that you're a human, you're allowed to feel those emotions. And sometimes people say, I don't know why I'm a 2. And the next day they're like, today I'm feeling like a 4 and I'm not really sure, and that's okay, right? So when they go to leave 3 hours later, they're like, I'm a 6, and I feel great now that I've physically kicked the ball for an hour. So yeah, it's just like a little check-in program.
That's so important for kids because, oh man, I don't know. Like, how do I even put this into words? It's like kids so often like beat themselves up for feeling upset and just
Yeah.
feeling like a 2. And there's like, when I was growing up as a kid, there was never any adult that was like, hey, do you want me to just sit with you and register that feeling? It was always like, why are you feeling that way? These are ways to stop feeling that way. And then it just kind of makes you feel more guilty and more shame of feeling like a 2.
Yeah, and even like when kids like fall, you hear some people, like, if they fall and they scrape their elbow, like, oh, get up, you're a big boy, you're a big girl, shake it off. Like, and I think with emotions, we're so quick to say, okay, you're sad. Okay, be sad. Now hurry up, let's go, because we have things we got to do. Right.
Hmm.
So I think that, we just have to stop and really be in that moment to have that compassion and empathy towards anybody.
Yeah, I could not agree more. That's totally it. So you were abducted at 7?
Yeah, so there was a party going on at my dad's house out in the country, and it was Thanksgiving, and I was 7 years old, and it was like probably a good 2 o'clock in the morning ish, and the party ended, and there was still, people that were, passed out kind of thing, and the guy, he came into the house, took me out of my bed and brought me, it was dark and it was raining, and I was brought into his car, and I was gone for a couple hours, and then he I guess, and I could smell the alcohol off of him, and then he ended up returning me. So I after returned, I went and told my father what had happened, and I got checked out by the nurse, and the police were contacted, and this individual, I believe to this day, wasn't found, for his arrest. But I think the behaviors that came out of that, I started wetting to bed. I started having nightmares. I started having, aggressive behaviors, just acting out because so in that aspect I moved on to a foster care program, and in that foster home the dad had sexually assaulted me as well. So there was always, and people say, well, how many times did these sexual events happen? Well, everywhere I went it was like I was being sexually assaulted. So if it was a family member, if it was a neighbor, if it was a babysitter, it's almost like I had like victim written across my forehead, and I was just like, nobody could hear me really speak words because I really didn't know what to say. I had therapists and specialists just really, really trying to dig with me, even art therapy. But, once I got a hold of drugs when I was a little bit older, I was able to numb all that and, kind of disappear in my mind and my heart and just not care anymore. And once I got, different types of drugs and finally finding that, more and more drugs and different types of drugs numbed me even more. There was moments where I was at parties where, friends would stick their fingers down my throat and make me throw up because they're like, she's going to overdose. So, being arrested, 4 times, I have to thank the correctional system for, sending me away for incarceration, because I would go in at like 110, 115 pounds and, come out, at 130 pounds healthy, being checked out by doctors, and just, and I think in those moments of homelessness, I used to sleep in friends' garages and closets and different couches, and just, sometimes I'd have to stay up for 3 days just for safety, or sleeping in Salvation Army bins. To this day, they lock them. But survivor of suicide, I'm in 2 documentaries just talking about that. So layers and layers of trauma. I'm not looking for that empathy piece, but what I am looking for is, for more people to share their story as a message of hope. So.
Mm-hmm. Man, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because this is what I love about your story and what you're doing is like you've been through so much trauma and you have all these layers of trauma, and yet you're still today in a position where you're helping other people and you're helping kids express emotions, and you're doing trees of stars on tour. It's very inspiring for people who might be in that situation, thinking that that's all they are. Like, if they get sexually assaulted, that's their label now. Or if they get arrested, like their label is criminal, or they just feel like that's it for them. I think your story kind of just proves that wrong. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I've been I always take everything as a blessing. So, I mean, ways of helping out. I mean, right now I've got my Jeep full of produce. I'm going to deliver to some musicians and some people that are in the community that are, struggling, and just putting a smile on their face. So I really enjoy that. And, it takes me an hour to go and drive to go pick up these groceries. But in that meantime, it's that self-care that I'm going to be driving for an hour and listening to music and, just singing. And even though I'm not the greatest singer, but yeah, just that self-care piece. And like I said, self-care looks differently for other people. And it does make me feel good when I drop these bags of groceries off to people's houses and, they're struggling and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So, and I will talk about, if it's okay with you, is just some of my different, platforms and what I use them for on social media.
Yeah.
So YouTube is just basically Tria Stars. But that's more of like, I've done hugging events where I've went out and I had a hugging crew and we would hug people for 12 full hours downtown Hamilton. And, once a year we would do that. Obviously with the pandemic, we're not doing that, but, I still remember people's names and just a look on their face. Like when you're like, I even stopped bus drivers and I waved them down and I, went and hugged them, so that's where YouTube kind of sits. And then with TikTok, I go live twice a day, just for 10 minutes to do a check-in. It's kind of like that 1 to 10. And then Instagram, I've interviewed probably close to 300 musicians around the world, going live with them and just, promoting them on Spotify. And yeah, we did a CD release album for funds going 100% to the Youth Wellness Center. So that was with 13 different female musicians lending Tria Stars a song. So it's been busy and it's been great. It's a passion to help other people, but really my purpose is if I can save a life through my story and just helping out a little bit, that's enough to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's incredible. How do you find the time for all of that?
It's very structured. So I have a calendar. And I also just recently developed a volunteer committee. So I have, different volunteers making, event posters on Facebook. And I schedule things in because for me, my self-care is like super, super important, and I'm not perfect. But so in the morning, even, when my alarm clock goes off, I don't turn my phone on. I make sure that I journal for 10 minutes. I read a positive book for 20 minutes. I do 20 to 30 minutes of cardio, and then I just make sure that I chug a big glass of water, and then I have a cup of coffee. And then during my shower, I do kind of like a body scan, and I ask any kind of negativity to leave my body. And then I also, I'll just be thankful for my eyes that I can see, my nose to smell, my ears to hear, my mouth to taste, and then to speak. And then just thankful for the rest of my body, my hands to move and to drive, right? So I'm super thankful from head to toe just to be here. So there's those little remedies. And yeah, I like to paint. I like to play a bit of guitar, self-taught. And I would absolutely have to say that the self-care too, people like you, I love connecting with other people and not just sharing my story and just asking like, how are you and where you're from. So
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, that's so great. That shower, I might have to steal that shower gratitude activity from you because sometimes you don't feel it in the morning. Yeah.
it feels really good. And I also challenge people. So I'm reading a book right now from Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk. And he also expresses, when you're brushing your teeth and you're like, I got to go to work. He's asking or requesting as like a practice is to take 4 seconds per tooth so that you're like, okay, I really want to brush my teeth and I really care about my teeth. And it's those small little things, right? So, again, we don't have to be perfect, and everybody's self-care is completely different from day to day or minute to minute, especially with the pandemic. So.
Hmm. Yeah, the little things are important. Like the looking at your phone as soon as you wake up, I do it too. And it doesn't the strange thing with phones is like when you're on social media, it's not like you feel great after, but it feels like an obligation. Like you feel like I have to check it. Like when you wake up, as soon as you wake up, you're like, I have to check my notifications. It's like, yeah, it's so strange.
Yeah, I think that, when we wake up, we need to give back to ourselves first. And that's that whole cup of coffee where, we're filling our own cup. And how are we going to do that? And one of the things I do in one of my workshops is making a self-care calendar. If it's today, I'm going to journal for 5 minutes. Tomorrow, I'm going to read for 10 minutes, and making sure that what we're reading, or even just watching like a scary movie. How about we watch something positive or funny? So I think just making sure that we're encouraging that positivity. And it's not to say that every day is always going to be positive. I have my moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I want to cry, and I do cry, right? So just because I do these self-care remedies, and I've had these opportunities to go help out, I have my days. Suffering from ADHD, I'm like, why am I thinking about 30 things right now when I'm only supposed to be doing one? So I
Hmm.
kind of giggle about it, and it is what it is. I'm unmedicated, but sometimes it could be an adventure.
Yeah, sometimes it's like an over enhanced multitasking.
Why am I hugging this bear? I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, exactly. So when after you go through all of this in your life, and like where does this self-care start? Like when was it where you realized like I need to go get like help externally?
Yeah, so back in April 2017, I mean, prior to that, I was doing, self-care remedies. I have my toolbox, but I think there was more of an extreme to schedule that in daily. And in April 2017, I had a hernia surgery, and I was only supposed to be off for 3 weeks, but I ended up running into more complications, giving me 5 months off. So being, my whole entire story, and fast forwarding it all up to age 40, I have never taken 5 months to myself.
Mhm.
Not saying people have to do that, but it was like it was like an awakening. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never done this before. Oh, I've never looked in the mirror, and like the Louise, like I said, I was reading this book, Louise Hayes, and or even just going on to like TED Talks and listening to people. And like I said, I had 5 months to myself, so it was, I have all this time to really, really, be aware and analyze everything in my life. So and it came to a point too, with even just people I hung out with or things that I followed on Facebook. The impact of these books that I was reading, I wanted more. I wanted to be in the back of my head going, okay, like this is my life, and what do I actually want that's good for me? If there's any kind of negativity around me, I don't need that. So I would just kind of delete it. And it was like a very refreshed shower, like a purging of my own life in different ways. So yeah, I think that, having that moment of 5 months to myself, and many people may not have that time, but we're in a pandemic. A lot of people are stuck at home. So, it's maybe a good time to pick up a good book. I can definitely recommend Jay Shetty, How to Think Like a Monk. And he's got many practices in his book that, you know, he talks about how service, like people that service like the community, live longer. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to deliver more groceries.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a big thing. If you look at like other countries that aren't in the Western civilization, they're all about community.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that, he talks a lot about attachment, just to things and materialistic things, but and then he talks about having our own space for ourselves. So even with me being inside my Jeep, excuse me, is my own space, my own office, but it's also me time. I have a couple roommates, so it's me time. I also have a partner, but it's me time, and that's super, super important. So yeah.
Yeah, me time is definitely important too. So when you had to sit down and you had to look at your life and kind of like take a step back and strip through these layers, was that intimidating?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think even just, what's important and what's not important. So, it's almost like when we're growing up and it's, our parents try to tell us, or some parents try to tell us, like, it's not the amount of friends that you have, it's the quality of friends. So I
Mhm.
think even just in aspects of, I might have two really good jobs, but I still shop at secondhand stores. I'm like, do I really need, $100 sweater, or could I just go with this secondhand sweater that helps out different shelters and buy it for $10, $15 because there's no rips or stains in it? So I really think that, I have filtered through almost like all remedies, and it's still a practice because, I try to stay away from malls, but, I really like baseball caps. So, do I really need that baseball cap, or, or even tattoos? I love my tattoos. Do I really need that right now? So I think just materialistic things, to me, it's still a practice of like, okay, do I really need this? And then, we go into that other aspect of like, what are we putting into our mouths? Are we intaking, a Gatorade, or are we going to drink like coconut water? So are we going to have 3 coffees a day, or are we going to have one? So it's kind of like looking at this big picture of wellness. You got your food, you got your friends. Even if you wanted to take a long drive, well, what's your budget? Can your budget handle going for an hour drive? Or is it, so I think it's, there's a big picture here, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I only mention that because with the pandemic, I talked to this guy. His name's Dr. Friedman Shaw, but he talked about how being locked up in your house with yourself and your own thoughts, it could be a fantastic thing, but it could also really be a terrifying thing because
Mm-hmm.
some of us haven't done that work before.
Yeah, and I think that that's super important. This comes with a toolkit, um, not only just for self-care, but just to know our resources. So, one of my remedies is just knowing that, I've got those numbers on hand. I think through this second the second wave, second lockdown that we had, even myself having those moments of like, how long is this going to be here? Like, I really don't want to be here. And it's not that it was, and perhaps maybe we catch ourselves, we're like, was that a bit of suicide ideation there? Like that you don't want to be here because it's just too much. So I think that the awareness and knowing your resources, who can you contact? And right now virtually there's so much virtual peer support happening, many podcasts like yourself just reaching out to other people and building that resource list, if it's music or art, or if it's different organizations. I've got contacts that are out in Germany and Hawaii so like, and they're doing these Zooms where people of all culture, religions, and safe space for anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty with like social media and stuff, is like, well, to some extent, we're more connected now than ever. I know it's a different kind of connection, and maybe not one that can fully replace, in-person connection, but when that's all you have right now in lockdown, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that, not to go back to the first lockdown, but it's like people were afraid to like go outside,
Mm-hmm.
and getting people to have that beginner movement again. So now that we're in the third lockdown, it's almost like, okay, don't forget movement. So I think just stretching our bodies and taking that proper water intake, and then just being mindful what we're putting, because nobody's going to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. So when you're looking at, different aspects, if it's okay, here's my financial budget, I'm going to sit down and do this. And then here's, my mental wellness. I need to make sure that I'm moving at least, once a day. And if you can't hug anybody, then hug a tree. I know it sounds silly, but hug a tree for a minute. I'm pretty sure you'll smile. So yeah, just little things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all definitely really important. Do you do you ever experience, like, let's say it's like an anniversary of the day you got kidnapped, or the time you got incarcerated, or what have you? When those anniversaries come up, do you still ever get like a reaction from yourself?
Absolutely. And that's a trigger. And with any kind of workshops that I do, I say that every kind of trigger is a strength. So from age 7 to now, and I'm 44, it's that building of the strength, because the images of that event are still stuck in my head. Nobody can go inside my head and erase those images, but I can feel that moment and go, okay, this happened to me. I've done this many practices or seen how many therapists, but here I am today in the moment, and this is how far I've come, and this is what I'm doing to better myself for wellness.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. It can be hard, right? Like, you almost get sucked up into it. Like when an event that's traumatic has happened to you, it's like when that anniversary comes, that reaction, you start to almost forget all the resources you have. You're just kind of in that moment. It's like tunnel vision almost.
Yeah, I think even just like a trigger for me would be something like an Amber Alert. And,
Mm,
back then there was no Amber Alerts. It was just, but again, I'm blessed that I was returned. So yeah, like anytime, like it sounds a little bizarre, but like an Amber Alert, I'm like, oh, and I feel that empathy or compassion for that individual. And I'm like, I really hope that they find them. So, you know, again, that's where I'm like, okay, that happened to me, but what am I doing today to better myself and not to get over it? People talk about this like get over it or let it go. There's moments where, I've lost my father to cancer. I've lost my best friend to cancer. There's many humans that I've lost in my life. But one of the things I've done is I tuck those people in my heart so that I'm allowed to miss them. I'm allowed to continue to love them. And even if I go to forget them, I'm like, you know what? Life is busy, but I still love them and they'll always be with me, especially in my heart. So I think that we're all humans that deal with things differently. And, whatever remedies work for you might work differently for me. So I think that is definitely, one of my bigger things that I guess could shut out and be loud about, is that we're all different and we all deal with things differently.
hmm. I've never, on that note, like I've never really understood the whole, you're still up, you still miss them, or you're still upset about their death. Like it's been years. It's like, well, they were a part of my family. I've never understood the whole get over it thing when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really a supporter of let it go or get over it. But I am a believer, like, so if my dad's anniversary comes, it's been 20 years, if it's lighting a candle in memory of them, or you know and just to kind of go back to your question about anniversary dates and triggers is like I said, it was on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving for me has taken many years to be like, you know what? Like, today's a good day where I'm surrounded by my family, even though I know that on Thanksgiving that had happened to me. So in that moment of the trigger, I feel like the forgiveness and the being blessed really helps.
Mm, yeah, yeah, that's important. It's important to like it's important to express gratitude in that moment because it's so easy to forget about it when your whole vision is clouded.
Yeah, I do have a support system too that, checks in with me. They know that those dates are hard for me. So, one of the things I guess I could share as a part of self-care is and I don't know if anybody wants to try this, but in my cell phone, I have an A list and I have a B list. So my A list, I know that those A list people, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I got a flat tire, they will be there for me 100% and I will be there for them. The B list, meh, I'm not really sure if they're 100% going to be there, and then I got the Z list. So it's like, why are you even in my phone? So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, like I've developed this kind of like purging through my phone kind of thing and just like making sure that support system is there, and that support system is like our parents or whoever says, like in the past, to say, it's not the amount of friends you have. So I feel like I got like a 5 6 good friends that are really really there for me. So
hmm Yeah, no, you have to have a good group of friends. I've been blessed in life where I have like a really good small circle. But I know people that don't. And I think it's important to find those people. Like I knew people in university who had no friends and like and then they would just like they would have no one to turn to. It's important to find, even if it's just one or two people to just reach out to. Like I think some people, when you say you have to have a group of friends or you have to have a support system, people find it intimidating because they think like, oh, I need like 20 people and I can't find 20 people that will care about me. It's like, well, you only need one.
yeah, and I think that that's where volunteer, if you volunteer for different places, that's where it's a community of service of people that want to give back. So if you're hanging out with the right, not to say the right people, but the like-minded people that you're looking for, if you're into sports, then go join, a sporting or follow some sport pages and connect with people online. Again, with the pandemic, it's really hard, but or join a walking group, right? A social distance walking group, join like an arts group or a beginner's art group where you're like, okay, I got a paintbrush and a canvas. What do I do?
hmm
Or one of the things too is I quit smoking 4 years ago and I took my smoking money and I bought a guitar, and I'm holding this guitar and I'm like, this is going to be quite the journey. But I was constantly on YouTube, and yeah, so I don't smoke to this day, but I took my smoking money and I bought a guitar. So, if you're a smoker, maybe challenge yourself to say, okay, I'm taking that budget money and I'm going to go buy myself a guitar, and just, or even if it's a ukulele or a harmonica for $15, take up a new hobby and connect with those other people that are doing the same thing.
That's awesome. I bought a ukulele like 2 years ago and I've yet to touch it, but that's really cool.
Let me know when you get your first song and I'll put you on my Instagram.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that would be that. Yeah, I need the exposure. I'm gonna actually go to a bunch of labels and ask if I can get signed. That's kind of the goal. No, there's no way.
Yeah. No, yeah, you could sing like "You Are My Sunshine" or "Old MacDonald Had a Farm."
Oh, that would go viral. Maybe for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, ukuleles are hard though. They're so small and like, I don't know, that's a lot of work.
Well, it's
It's
the
yeah.
strumming I don't get. Like with a guitar, I used to play when I was a kid, and it was like, you strum down and up sometimes, but ukulele, it's like down, down, up, down, 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 up, down. It's like really fast paced. My brain just, ugh. He's like, can we
Yeah.
go eat something instead?
Well, I know Ed Sheeran, he said the one time there's no mistake to music. So, I mean, nothing like being a kid again.
Amen. Exactly. That's exactly it. So Trees of Stars on tour, it has a big it's like art and music kind of theme. Where did that theme get inspired from, or what was that inspired by?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been into like photography, and my dad, as mentioned, he was a DJ, so I was always surrounded by music. But when I moved to Hamilton, I really, from North Bay to Hamilton, I really started going out to venues and supporting musicians and connecting with different musicians, and selling venue tickets for them, helping out sell merchandise. I would help out with their album releases, and just connecting with that Hamilton music community group. I would go to open mics, just meeting different musicians and hanging out with them, and it's been pretty awesome. So I wanted to give back to the community, and so the first thing we did was the album release. I had the 14 musicians lend a song, but we did an album release party. We sold out the tickets and sold the albums. And still today, it's still on Spotify, and funds go 100% to the Youth Wellness Center downtown in Hamilton. But so yeah, my mission statement is basically promoting mental health and addiction through music, arts, and different resources. So Instagram, if you're an artist or a musician, I do pay musicians for their gig if they play 3 songs and an interview. We've also created like a Spotify playlist where, all the musicians that have Spotify that we've interviewed, we have a playlist going. So that's been pretty cool. And just connecting with different musicians around the world has been super awesome and super inspiring, because, sometimes I've had to get up at 7 a.m. because of time zones. And, so yeah, it's been really interesting, and it's growing. I've got a couple different monthly sponsors. Crossing my fingers for Long and McQuaid, because it would just really be nice to know that I got the funds to pay all the musicians that come on there, and that they all talk about their mental health and what they're doing for self-care, and what their resources are. So it's really a great platform over there, and a safe space for people to kind of just hang out and be themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also nice to see like musicians and other people who have, well, even if you're not that big of a celebrity, but like a face in the media, it's nice to see them go, hey man, I struggle too, and here's what works for me. It's like sometimes you forget, you kind of put celebrities or people with a following on social media, you kind of put them on a platform, and you're just like, I will never get there because I'm stuck with my mental health, or I'm too depressed or too anxious to get to that level. It's like, well, everyone up there is going through something too. So it's important to remember that.
Yeah, and that's what I did with the album. So I had the more well-known musicians, and then I had musicians that have never been in a studio before. And then, even just with one of the musicians on the album, they only did covers. And I'm like, if you can come up with a song in 3 weeks, I'll throw you in the studio. So, that was one of the things that we worked on, where it was like, okay, these musicians that are higher up here and these musicians here working really hard, they can almost help their following and help them get more exposed. And that musician that is on the album that wrote a song, got it recorded in 3 weeks. Now gigs, in the Hamilton area, and I've also mentored her. She's a teenager, so I've mentored her to go to other gig areas to get paid for her music and her skill. So just things like that. It's those proud moments that definitely brings community together. And like I said before, it takes a village, right? So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So this episode will come out I think late May, but putting yourself in your own shoes at the end of May, where does Trees of Stars, like what's next for you?
Yeah, so I used to run journal and music workshops out in the community and cafes for 3 years, committed to every other Tuesday in different cafes for 3 years. But with the pandemic, I've been doing journal workshops on other people's platforms. But I just released a Zoom for our first journal workshop for peer support, where we'll have a musician, perform, and then also just having that group connection. So just having that peer support in a Zoom every other Wednesday. Currently growing a volunteer committee. And then additionally, I'm crossing my fingers that if this all goes well, that I'll be like an international charity to continue to interview musicians and resources like yourself and different artists. So yeah, just coming together and keeping it real.
Love it. Love it. And before I let you go, If there was one thing for the viewers, of course, if anyone's going through a similar situation to the one that you had experienced in your past, what would you want to tell them when they're at their lowest point, when they think like there's no future for me, they're just a label?
Yeah, everybody always says like it's okay not to be okay, but I think in that aspect, to finish off that it's okay not to be okay is to know your resources and reach out. Nobody's a burden. Even if it's throwing me a DM at 3 o'clock in the morning, or, I can find somebody of an organization, anybody out there to help support. But, if you're lying in bed and then you're on day 3 or day 7 and you're super depressed and you're crying, you can't get out of bed, reach out. And I think that should be worldwide hashtag is reach out, because there are resources, but there's also, people that care that aren't an organization that provide that peer support to say like, you know what, I've had a really, crappy life handed to me and things happened and we're alive today. So, I've reached out and I continue to reach out for myself as well. So please reach out because the world cares.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Everyone, if you're listening and you're going through something, please reach out, whether it's messaging Jessica or messaging me. I'm on my phone 24/7. I know it's not healthy, but I will answer your DM pretty quickly. So, Jessica, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure. And, stay safe, stay self-care, and stay connected for sure. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time.